Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. For today's episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Claire Powell to discuss her latest novel, All In, a book for you to hoover up this summer. All In includes all of my favourite things from a novel: complex family dynamics, a relationship falling apart and failing to communicate, a dreamy holiday, and the potential for everything to implode. Author of All In, Claire Powell is a writer based in southeast London. She is a graduate of the University of East Anglia Creative Writing MA. She was awarded the Malcolm Bradbury Bursary and the Malcolm Bradbury Continuation Prize. Claire's short stories have been broadcast on BBC Radio 4, and in 2017 she won the Harper's Bazaar Short Story Contest. Her debut novel, At the Table, was named one of the best books of 2022 by The Times and Sunday Times, The Telegraph, The Critic, Red Magazine and Good Housekeeping. Her latest novel, All In, has been described by Claire Lynch, author of A Family Matter, as an expertly drawn family drama, and Marianne Keyes has called Claire an incredible new talent. Here to discuss All In with me, welcome Claire to A Pair of Bookends.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've absolutely loved reading All In. I have enjoyed it so much, and I basically hoovered it all up on Saturday, the majority of it anyway. I had so much fun. So I'm really looking forward to diving in. But before we get into All In, I do like to start by asking what you're currently reading.
I have literally just finished, or a night or two ago, and actually I always feel like when I read a really good book, I kind of need a break. So this is what I've just read is Switzy by Emma Cline. It's out in September. It's been longlisted for the Booker. I reckon it might win the Booker.
Really?
I don't know. I've only read 3 books on the list, and the other 2 books I also really liked. But I feel like this does something. It's such a good book, but it's also it's amazing because she has gone into the mind of a man who is slowly, I guess, losing his mental faculties. He is, I think it's dementia. There's another thing, but we're only ever in his mind, and he is flying from America on a private jet to Switzerland. He's going to make a stop in London, and he's with his assistant. The main character, David, is like a retired businessman, so the private jet has been put on by like a friend of his, and it's a stream of consciousness, but it's actually in these sort of short vignettes, or you're bouncing around quite a lot. And to begin with, it can take a bit to sort of get into that, because you're really having to work as a reader to work out what's actually happening, what's in his mind, and the things that are in his mind, linking those together. But oh my God, does it pay off? I found it so unbearably moving. I finished it on Sunday. I had a bit of time, like the kids were playing in the other room, and I sat down and I was just like, tears were just streaming from my face. So this is sort of 3/4 of the way through or something, and oh my God, it's just a phenomenal book.
Oh,
I'm so glad that I can recommend something absolutely brilliant that I've just finished. Yeah, I really loved it, and it's out in September. Yeah,
can't wait to get to that. I've had that on my TBR for I think a couple of months now, maybe. And
have you read our others? Did you enjoy?
I read The Girls years ago, and I don't know. I don't think I was at the place in my life to read that, because I was like, "What the hell is going on?" Like, it was so like wild, the journey that you go on with those characters. So I don't think I was the right person for that. I enjoyed her writing style, but yeah, that was a bit of a wild trip for me. But then I've got the Guest, is it?
Yeah.
I've got that, and I
too,
haven't read it yet. So I'm excited to get into those, and I've heard really good things so far about Switzy, so I'm really excited.
She's so brilliant. Her short stories are so good as well. You can hear her short stories on the New Yorker. She reads them. She's just, she's brilliant writer.
I'm excited. Also, big energy that she's that you're saying that she might win the Booker.
You know, because I knew that Flesh was going to win. I am never involved in the Booker. Like, I often feel like the Booker, they choose books that I'm like, I have no interest in. I'm not really into like experimental fiction, so I don't know, or fiction that's like incredibly like, oh God, it's a bit of hard work that I'm going to feel very intellectual if I read it. I don't care. But last year's shortlist and long list I really liked, and there have been other years that I've liked books that are on it, but I had a feeling that Flesh was going to win. And my feeling this year is that Switzy's going to win. And
Place a bet.
Should I should place a
Do
bet?
it,
Yeah. But I also really enjoyed Black Bag by Luke Kennard, that's also on the long list. I think that's such a funny novel.
I really want to read this.
He is absolutely brilliant. Whether they would give a comic, would they give a comic novel the top prize? I don't know.
Surely they could.
Yeah.
I feel like they've really sort of gone out of left field this year with like there's such a variety of books, and you can really see the different judges' tastes coming through.
Yeah, like Patricia Lockwood, and
you
Jarvis
can
Cocker,
absolutely see that, and I found it really refreshing.
Me too.
I was saying
There's a lot on the list that I would like to read, actually.
That's what I said to my friend this year, that like it's the first year where I felt like I'm actually intrigued by every single book on the list. And not to say that there's been a few books in previous years, but this is the first year where I'm like, I could actually read every single one of these. I think it can often feel like, I don't know, for me anyway, it's often felt in previous years that like, I don't know, I'm not intelligent for some of the books on the Booker. And
I feel the same, quite serious, quite like, oof, right, that's
I don't know if it's too dense.
This is still quite fun.
Yeah. So I'm excited, but especially excited for Switzy. But let's get into your book. Could you start us off by setting up the story of All In for the listeners?
Yeah, so All In is about a married couple, Joe and Dave, who are taken on holiday for the weekend by Dave's brother on a sort of all-inclusive to an all-inclusive hotel, but also like all expenses paid by Dave's brother, who is a trader in Dubai, so he's got a lot of money. And also on this trip is Dave, and the brother's called Teddy, Dave and Teddy's dad, and Teddy's girlfriend Kayla. That's the sort of setup for the weekend. The novel takes place from Friday to Monday, but really it's a novel about a marriage, and it's a novel about family. And Joe and Dave are not in a great place in their life. They have got to a point where they're kind of at the end of doing a numerous rounds of IVF, and the question in Joe's mind is this, can they survive this as a couple? And things sort of come to a head over the weekend. It's also about being in a lovely hotel, and the sort of different interactions with people at the hotel and family dynamics.
It's brilliant.
I described my own book.
No, that was great. You alternate in this book, your chapters sort of alternate between Joe and Dave's perspectives. And I wondered why you wanted to write both sides to this marriage.
Well, to begin with, I was only writing Joe, and it was Joe going on holiday with, I guess, Dave's family. I can't remember if he was called Dave at this point. And it was very much going to be like a woman's perspective of getting to this point in her life, and where does she stand on it, and what does she, and in that sort of draft or early, I can't remember how much I wrote of it. The marriage was really not very good, and we didn't he sort of came across really badly in it. And I kind of came to a standstill with it, because I just couldn't find, I wasn't hugely enjoying writing that. It felt a bit one note. And then I was like, I'm going to just put Dave in. I'm just going to explore seeing Dave's perspective. And as soon as I started writing him, it was like launch, basically, lift off. I loved being in his perspective. I loved it being, okay, this is a marriage and there are two sides to it. And both of them know things that the other one doesn't know. That was really fun to play with, the kind of dramatic irony of what the reader knows, what Joe knows, what Dave knows, what other characters know. There's a lot of that play in the novel. This kind of, I guess, that's the sort of that's the kind of comedy aspect of it. Is one person knows this, another person thinks that. There's a lot of opportunity for sort of misinterpretation, misunderstanding. So I really enjoyed doing that. And I guess I also wanted to write about a bloke's perspective of being at this point in life, of not being able to have children, and where do you go, and what has that effect been on your marriage and on your life and on your sense of self, because I felt as though it wasn't something that I'd read before.
No, I don't think you do hear much about the partner's perspective, and we will come on to their sort of journey with IVF in a moment. But I just want to say about the way that the reader knows certain things. We learn things from Joe, we learn different things from Dave. Dave. I found that to be such a fun, playful energy with this book. I was so intrigued. I was like, what is going to happen with these two? Especially the opening scene is so brilliant. You know, it's the opening pages, so I don't feel like it's a massive spoiler to say, but you hear this like glass smashing, and like you would, she wakes up, you know, in bed, she's terrified. Her husband's next to her. She's like, did you hear that? Like the glass is smashed. Like what's going on? She thinks somebody's breaking in, and he's just like really unbothered. Like she's just like, we need to go and sit. Like she expects him to go up and be like man of the house to like check everything's safe, and he just doesn't. And immediately you can see the differences in their dynamic, and you know, how is this going to work if because you immediately think it's horrible, but you immediately think like, God, he's really pathetic, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, Dave is kind of pathetic. I mean,
a little bit.
There's a lot of things about him that's a bit pathetic, but
you do come to understand his sort of insecurities and stuff as the novel goes on, which is why it's great that we do alternate between the two perspectives, because I think otherwise I would have just been like, oh, I feel nothing for you, mate.
yeah. And there are a lot of things about him that aren't pathetic, that are quite, you know, he's somebody who really looks after his dad, actually. And has been, you know, he doesn't make a big deal about that, unlike his brother, who's sort of laying on this expensive holiday. All right, I'm gonna treat you all. We're gonna do this. You know, we're gonna have an amazing time. Whereas Dave and Joe are just sort of getting on with the drudgery of life at home. Like they have the responsibilities. And so that's something that I admire about Dave, that he doesn't make a big deal about the things that he does do.
Yeah, there's a lot of frustrating moments though between them both where, you know, they might say something to the other that rattles them, and you know, there might be a moment where there's an opportunity to repair something that's gone wrong, and they'll consider like reaching out a hand or like going to hug the other, or like thinking I should probably like make a move here, or I should probably do something, and then they decide against it. And you know, that is for so many people that happens, you know, these missed opportunities to actually communicate. It's something that crops up a lot in contemporary fiction, and I wondered why you think we're so kind of fascinated by that type of dynamic.
People not
communicating
or not communicating.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fascinated by it because I think it's true.
Yeah.
I think it's true. And I think that we might watch American films where people say exactly as they're feeling, and they say, I love you, when they love the person, and maybe that does happen in America. But in my experience as a British person having relationships with other British people, it might, like, we don't say the things that we feel. And I'm always interested in that thing, the contrast, the disconnect between what we might want to do and what we might feel, and how we present ourselves. And those two things, really, that's definitely something. Because I think it's true.
Oh no, 100%. And it's so frustrating to read it, but it just makes you remember like all the times where like you've been unable to communicate, or where you've been with somebody that's unable to communicate. It's so frustrating to read, and then you're like, oh, I know how that feels. And as you've said, you know, in their relationship, they are navigating IVF. They've had a really difficult, I think it's like 6 months since they finished their IVF journey.
Since their last round,
since their last round, and they've gone through a couple of rounds of this. They've had a really difficult time with it, and I would love to hear about why this was a topic that you wanted to explore in this novel, and the sort of impact that it has on your characters.
I had IVF, and so that was something that I had. I don't know. I went through a long time of wanting to have babies, and before I was able to, that really took over my life and my thoughts, and you know. And when I think I started this novel after I'd had my son, and I had this baby, and I was trying to think, right, what's my next book going to be about, and played around with lots of different ideas, but couldn't really. I still felt very attached to that part of myself that had gone through that. It wasn't like I had children and was suddenly like, ta-da, that's it, over. That part of me, all of those things have gone now. Like, I still felt very close to that experience, and all of that, you know, it's a lot. And so I wanted to give that to Jo and kind of explore a lot of that through her, and then obviously through Dave as well. But I also, I guess there was a interest for me of being like, what if it hadn't worked?
Yeah.
And I don't want this to be, I wanted to write about that very specific moment in time where it's not one thing or another. It's just the difficulty in the relationship of having got to that point. They're not going through it. So they're not in the kind of, right, we've got a new appointment, da 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 da, busy, busy, busy. And they're also not at the point of either having had children later down the line or having sort of completely come to terms with it and be in their 50s and sort of have some distance from it. I wanted to write about this specific tension and time and the kind of what next of it.
Yeah, I think it's really frustrating for them both because they're not given any kind of clear-cut answers. And what do you do with that? You know, there's no clear direction to move forward when you're given, you know, oh, we don't actually know what's wrong.
Yeah.
So, and you're like, okay, well, what do I do next? What can you do with that information? You can't really do anything. So I think they're left in a really frustrating place. And as I said before, I really liked that you also showed his perspective because we do often hear from a woman's perspective, and I think it was nice to hear both sides of their dynamic of how frustrating it must have been for the two of them. And also, you know, that makes the miscommunication even more frustrating because you're like, you're both been through this like quite traumatic thing and you're unable to kind of talk through how hard it's been for you both.
Because it's so painful.
Yeah, it's really painful, and I think they don't want to look at it too closely maybe.
And I think you're very much, when you're doing, not just when you're doing IVF, but to be honest, when you're struggling to conceive, you're in a real limbo where you just can't picture what your future is going to be because you can't say what next year is going to be like. You can't say what the next 5 years are going to be like because you're just having to exist right now.
Yeah, and there's no
And
guarantee.
there's no guarantee. Nobody can come and tell you, oh, by the way, it'll be fine, but you're going to have a baby when you're 45 and you're going to do it through a donor egg, or you're going to adopt, or, you know, whatever. No one can tell you what's going to happen. So you're just having to live in this like in-betweeny place. And that's really hard on a relationship. It's hard to go through that kind of sense of loss for what hasn't been and loss of what might not happen. You know, it's just, I think it's a really difficult thing for a couple to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the whole choice to have children or to not have children is just such a difficult thing. You know, there's so many factors that play into it, you know, financial, you know, personal situations, professional situations, you know, there's so much to kind of consider. And yeah, it's really frustrating that there is no kind of guarantee for people that want to have children. I find it all really scary because I want to have children and, you know, there is no guarantee. So all of this is quite scary to talk about.
I'm sorry. Yeah, God, I'm sorry. And to be honest, I can
Don't be
imagine
sorry because I can't just put my head in the sand and, you know, pretend that these things don't exist, you know, that it's not going to be just an easy road, but it is.
Do you know what I've heard? Like some reviews I've read. When I say reviews, I'm talking about like Goodreads. I'm not talking about newspapers. But is people sort of saying, "Oh God, this is a much more bleak book than what I imagined it would be. I thought this was going to be a holiday." But I don't, and I can see that somebody could look at it as bleak because, you know, it probably for lots of people does feel bleak to think, "Oh God, this isn't ending with a happy ending." Not to give anything away, but it is an open-ended ending, I say. But, you know, it's not here's a problem, the problem's been solved.
Yeah.
It's just looking at the problem and it's just kind of sitting with it and having these people confront it and try to find their way back to each other. And it's just sort of about the reality of the difficulty of being in a long-term relationship, particularly when you've had sort of something this difficult to deal with together.
Yeah, life can be bleak. Like,
Yeah.
it's important that we read, you know, about the times in life where everything does feel incredibly shit, and
Yeah.
you know, there's no there's no other way to describe it, and it does feel like where do we go from here? So no, I really appreciated that, and whilst I felt anxious about my own situation, it doesn't mean to say that it wasn't an important thing to read about. And I have a quote here that I really wanted to read out, if you're okay for me to read out. So I really loved this section. For too long, she'd been unhappy, afraid of getting older, afraid of where her life was going, that without children, there was nothing ahead, just this empty vacuum, this heavy grief. But it came to her there, in the sea. She wasn't old, not old at all, and there was life left. This was life, wasn't it? And I just think so many people will need to read that and need to hear that. And there's so much pressure in society to have children, and there's such a pressure on women. And, you know, I'm constantly asked by very well-meaning people of like when me and my partner are going to have children, and, you know, when that's going to be. And, you know, you get so many questions kind of put on you, and it's a really heavy pressure. And I wondered if it was cathartic to write about those pressures that we face when you were writing this book.
Yeah, and I think it was cathartic to write about that. The holiday really shifts perspectives. It certainly shifts Jo's perspective when she has that moment in the sea with an older man who I shall say no more of if you haven't read the book. But we can, you know, in life, a lot of us are leading very kind of conventional lives. Back to that thing of sort of the drudgery of the day to day. We're all in, you know, and you'll be, if you're in your 30s, then you will be probably in a social environment where suddenly all your friends are having babies, or they get married, or they're moving to houses. Like all of us all seem to be doing exactly the same thing. And in the novel, they have been on that kind of, you know, travelator or whatever, doing everything that other people are doing, except not, because they haven't had the children, but trying to. And suddenly they are in this completely different environment, and Jo meets another guest at the hotel and goes and does something that kind of makes her feel, oh, and like just that lovely, I guess it's like nature as well. She's in the sea. There's this freedom that there's suddenly, you know, when you just have those moments in your life when you're like, you've just been pulled out of the ordinary, I guess, and the things that you're just having to do it day by day by day by day. And suddenly you're able to look at life in a different way. And she is able to see that, you know, that the way she had been looking at herself of like, oh, I'm just old, like throughout her 30s, probably being told you're geriatric now and let's go and count your eggs and all of that. And suddenly it's like, well, I'm in my early 40s. I'm doing all right. I'm, you know, and I love that kind of epiphany, I suppose, that she has. That was really important.
Yeah, I think we've all had those on holiday.
Yeah, it's
I
a great
think,
thing about holiday.
yeah, absolutely. Now, this holiday that they've gone on, I think you said before, is paid for by Dave's brother Teddy, who is pretty well off. And even, you know, their dad, Alan, who just says things as it is, says at one point quite bluntly, you know, Cora, it's all right for some.
Mm.
And obviously, we've spoken about IVF and how that can put financial pressures on a person. And I was really fascinated by the way money affects the sort of balance in this family. And I would love for you to tell us a bit about what interested you in specifically exploring the financial differences in a family dynamic.
Oh, yeah, because when I was first writing it, I think there wasn't a wealthy brother. They were just all going to, you know, they were all sort of chipping in. I think money is an issue that is constant for all of us. I think money is inescapable, and you might have, you know, been raised in the same family where you're under the same roof, and so your money situations are the same. But then as you get older, you know, that can change even in the microcosm of a little family, you know, that one person can earn a lot more, one person can marry into money, you know, there can be that dynamic basically of two people or more than two, the discrepancy between it and the tension that brings up, and the resentment that brings up. And it just interests me. Money interests me. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I think it really complicates things sometimes. And I really love those moments when Teddy was talking to Dave about his job and, you know, being like, oh, I don't know if the word is settled, but I guess, yeah, like he's become quite, I don't know, would stagnant be the right word? But Dave's just become like, you know, he's stayed in the same job. He's not kind of asked about pay rises or promotions or anything like that. He's just sort of, you know, riding through. And some people are quite content living a life like that. And Teddy just can't understand it because he's got this kind of high flying job in Dubai, and, you know, he's really living the life of Riley out there.
Yeah, and they just have different personalities, and I think that can be a difficulty in a family too, to be like, how are we both raised by the same parents and yet we have such different personalities? And that now we are in our 40s, that's become clear that one of us, because they have more of like an ambitious go-getting, you know, there's one point where he said Teddy was always popular, like he was always somebody who wants people to like him, you know, how did that happen? And there can be resentments about that too. But as the book goes on, you know, we find that there are also things that Dave has that Teddy would probably quite like himself.
What was it like to, I don't know if this is a lame question, so bear with me, but what was it like to explore this sort of family dynamic where there isn't a female in the mix? There is just these two brothers and the dad, and it's a very like male dominated dynamic. But it's not like, I don't think it's necessarily like, toxic male dynamic, but it is just a very male heavy dynamic. So I wondered what that was like to play with.
Really enjoyable. Yeah, somebody asked me about masculinity recently, and I'm not sure that I was conscious as I was writing it, this sort of capital letter masculinity as a theme, but I did like the three men because I thought that was interesting, especially where they are missing the mother. And the mother obviously played quite a different, like she was, the boy's mum, I should say, has died a few years previously, and they're sort of missing her feminine energy, I suppose. She's sort of the softness, the ability to kind of make things okay. And where it's the three of them, and they do have, their dad is so kind of blunt, matter of fact, not particularly appreciative, somebody who complains quite a lot. They don't have that maternal figure anymore, and so they're all sort of swimming around a little bit lost, really.
I don't think that's wrong to say. I think that would have a drastic, impact because, men are, it's a stereotype, but I would say it's true in my experience with the men in my life that like men aren't necessarily great at talking, especially about their feelings. They're not.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, when their mum was present, maybe she brought them together, maybe she got them talking. And now it's like they've sort of lost that and they're just, floating out at sea. They don't really know what to do with themselves.
I think so. I do think so. I think that their mum was somebody who was really sort of involved, and there's a conversation that I think Joe and Kayla have like towards the beginning where they're talking about her, but she was a very sort of easy person and wanted to make things easy for other people and wanted to get the family together and did all those things that a lot of women do, kind of try to make life easier for others. And without her being that sort of person in the middle, they're all a bit, like you said, they're sort of flailing around and trying to find the new dynamic between them, being like, oh God, well, we've got Dad to look after, and all right, Dave's looking after him, but and Teddy's coming over and trying to do I'm going to be the big man, I'm going to look after us all here. But they are absolutely missing their mum, I think. Alan missing his wife.
100%. I would love for us to get into the fun holiday aspect of it all. As you've said, they travelled to this all-inclusive resort for the weekend. Why this setting in particular?
I love a hotel. I liked what a hotel that I love people watching.
Me too.
I liked the idea of sort of guests, that I love reading about houses, and I think there are a lot of novels about English families going and staying in houses on the continent. To me, this family would never go and rent a house. They would go to a hotel, especially, with Teddy sort of the all-inclusive. It's more of a, this is their treat. It's much more I liked I think it goes back to that thing of the sort of formative thing as well. I love in a hotel that thing of you get ready in the evening, you've sort of been around people in the daytime, and you've been wearing your slopped out on the beach with suntan lotion all over you, and but then in the evening you get dressed up and off you go, and you see the same people that you saw lying on their front dressed in nothing, passed out after reading their book or whatever, are now in a sort of smart shirt, and you see the sunburn and all of that. I liked that, the difference there of how we perform ourselves, how we want to present ourselves, and sort of the other side of things, or the things that are really going on. And it was a fun destination. I always knew they were going to go on holiday. I think at one point maybe I played around with a villa. It didn't feel true to me. So the hotel definitely felt like the right place for them to go to. And this all-inclusive, it's just the nice thing about all-inclusive is this like never-ending drinks and food, and
you don't really leave the hotel very much when you're all inclusive. And I think it must be so fascinating for staff working at those resorts, seeing the same people, it's such a brief time, but they must make up so many stories about the guests that come and like what they see, the only, brief interactions they have with them, or the things they see of their like dynamics. They must be like, oh, I bet, something's going on there, or I bet like they aren't getting on very well in their marriage. Like,
Yeah.
wonder how often they make up these stories in their heads.
Yeah, and you're right. And actually, the family do escape the hotel a few times,
Yeah.
actually. And there's almost that. And even with that, that becomes a thing where they're like, at one point Teddy rents a boat, and it's like, why are we renting a boat? We've got an all inclusive hotel here. Why are we leaving the premises where we've got rosé on tap or whatever, But yeah, that was just a fun thing to explore, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And with it being set abroad, and we're obviously recording this in August, although outside it's looking a bit grim today, for me anyway. But I would love to hear about some of the books that you would recommend people to dive into this summer, or what books that you've got on your reading pile this summer, whichever's easiest for you.
So I'm not really somebody who reads summer books in summer.
I will read really bleak stuff in summer.
Yes. So, but I was talking in a book club recently, and they said there's this thing that I hadn't heard of sort of reading seasonal books. So I do very much enjoy a holiday book.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we hear about them more at this time of year, and probably publishers choose to bring them out,
Yeah.
this in the summer. But that isn't really what I necessarily gravitate towards. Proofs on my reading, my bedside table at the moment. The book that I want to recommend I want to recommend this author. She is a Turkish author. I need to make sure I pronounce her name right. Ayşegül Savaş. Ayşegül Savaş. She wrote a book called The Anthropologist, a novel called The
Yes.
Anthropologist that came out a few years ago, which is a lovely short book about actually a very content couple, which seems there you're like, how's there a novel in this? Because shouldn't there be friction and problems? And I think that's what she does incredibly well, is that she does create a novel from it. It's a lovely novel. But also I've got her book of short stories here, Long Distance, and this came out, I think maybe last year or the year before. I'm just a huge fan of hers. She writes beautiful short stories, and her novel too. She's a really elegant writer. It's sort of deceptively simple. She writes in a really clean way. In this book, they're all kind of about people, I'm going to say in their kind of 30s. Every story, the characters sort of all feel like they could be in the same world. It's just a really lovely read, and that's called Long Distance. And so, especially now that I finished Switzy, I might have a little short story as a little palate cleanser between whatever novel I pick up next.
I do actually think as well that short stories are a great thing for people to take on holiday, because, you can dip in and out of it. You might read a story and then have a swim in the pool, or you might, have a read of one on your balcony before you get ready for dinner. It's nice to dip in and out of that, I think.
Yeah, that is a good idea, definitely. I feel like the times that I've gone on holiday, I haven't been on holiday for 2 years. I actually quite like a book that I can really get stuck into, though.
Fair.
One of those sort of almost like a big American-y type, The Interestings, or
which I've still not read.
Oh, The Interesting is just so good.
I need to read that.
But one of those ones where you're like, I just can't wait to get back to that world, and I know that's going to last me a while.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of all the books that I'm going away in October, but we're going to Japan and South Korea, and so we're doing a 2-week.
Japan.
Have you been?
Yes.
Oh my God, okay, you'll have to send me some tips.
Yeah, I went in 2018, so I feel like my tips probably won't be, but it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
I'm so excited.
So will you take physical books?
Yeah, I'm terrible. So we're going for just over 2 weeks, and I said to my boyfriend the other day, I said, how many books do you think I should take for that length of time? Bearing in mind, when we went for a week holiday, I took 5, and it was I don't know, 2. I was 2. It's I'll read them on the flight there.
Yeah, that's true. And it is a long flight.
Yeah.
I think you want a really long one.
Yeah.
You want one really long one, and then maybe you only need to take 3. Because in Japan, you will be doing traveling,
so much.
You'll be going from
here,
Tokyo
there, and
to
everywhere.
Kyoto. Yes, you don't want too much weighing you down.
No. And I'll probably visit bookshops there as well.
Yeah.
There's so many good bookshops that I'm really excited for. So yeah, I can't weigh myself down with too many, but I just panic about running out of reading material.
Well, set yourself a task like 3, and then make it on your mission when you get there to go and find a, English language bookstore.
Yeah, get hold of some great, Japanese fiction
translation or something.
Yeah, defo. Yeah, okay. You persuaded me. Lastly, before I let you go, Claire, I know you've just given me a recommendation, but is there anything else that you've been watching or listening to recently that you want to recommend? Podcast, TV, film, anything?
Oh God, give me a moment. Seen any films recently? Oh my God, I basically just do the kids' tea. I watch a lot of Hey You. I watch a lot of reality TV.
Great.
I do it as I'm doing my washing up. I mean, I was deep into Summer House before all the Summer House. Have you heard of Summer House?
I've heard about this, but I've not seen it.
Because there was a big sort of, it kind of broke through into mainstream. I don't even say press. I just want to say like Instagram-y press.
Yeah.
Because of a kind of controversial coupling. But I've watched that for years. Summer House is about New Yorkers, a bunch of New Yorkers, and we follow them every summer. They are real friends, or certainly in season 1, they start as real friends, and they rent a house in the Hamptons. I'm obsessed with the Hamptons. I'm obsessed with
so
things
fair.
that rich people do. Yeah, they rent a house in the Hamptons, and they just drink absolutely loads. As soon as they arrive, they're on the rosé, and then they all like sleep with each other and fight with each other, and then they go home on Sunday, and you might pick up a bit of their sort of life in Manhattan and their jobs. So it's not Big Brothery, because they do leave, and they might every weekend, like someone might not be able to come because of work, but we mostly see them over this weekend. And there's now many seasons. I've just been obsessed with it. And they're in their 30s. They're not that young. It's not like Love Island, where they're all sort of 22 influencers. They are generally late 20s, 30s. Now there are a few characters, they're real people, but a few people who are even in their 40s. It's just great escapism. And if you are into reality TV of the sort of Real Housewivesy type, I highly recommend Summer House.
I feel like I need to watch this now. I'm invested.
And I would actually say start from one of the early seasons, because there's also something really nice about watching, like 10 years ago wasn't that long ago, and yet it does feel like a lot has changed in that time.
Yeah,
it sort of feels like a slightly simpler time in a way, or everybody's a bit less polished than now. Not like in 10 years ago, the people who had real jobs, whereas now they're more likely to be like models / influencers. Their castmates. But yeah, it's really good.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Yeah, but sometimes you just need that, don't you? Yeah, so I'm excited. I think that's a great recommendation, honestly. You've given us the high with the low.
Yes. Always.
But thank you so much for coming on A Pair of Bookends, Claire. I've loved chatting to you.
Having me.
And I loved All In. It's such a brilliant novel, and there is so much to get into. And I feel like this would be a really great book club book. There's so much to discuss. So anybody out there with a book club, I would really recommend choosing this. Lastly, thank you so much, Claire. And
thank you, Hannah.
I believe the listeners can find you on Instagram.
Instagram, Claire Meg Powell.
Amazing. So go give Claire a follow, go buy her book All In, or her debut At the Table, and come and let me know what you think of All In so I can dive into it with you. Lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to rate, review and subscribe, and if you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on TikTok. But that is all we've got time for. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for the 400th time, Claire, and goodbye.